From South Carolina Public Radio, this is the South Carolina Lead. I'm your host, Gavin Jackson, and this episode was recorded on March 11th, 2024, from South Carolina Public Radio studios here in Columbia. In this episode, we look at Congresswoman Nancy Mace's latest tangle, this time involving ABC News' George Stephanopoulos. Senator Lindsey Graham continues his calls for greater support for the Israel conflict, and we return to the State House and hear from the Russ McKinney on the renewed drama involving the state's $3.5 billion accounting error that came to light last year. We also look at the constitutional carry bill that was signed into law, and Maayan Schechter updates us on a school vouchers bill and much more. The Lead loves hearing from everybody. That's why we have a voicemail box set up that you can call to share your thoughts, your gripes, your thoughts, your gripes, even more thoughts and gripes. But more thoughts than gripes, guys, because I don't need more gripes in my life. 803-563-7169. Leave us your name, where you're calling from, and what your gripe, your thought is. But I'm going to start griping if you guys don't start calling. 803-563-7169. Since Nikki Haley ended her presidential bid, a lot of people have been asking me, what are you going to do now? This is similar to what people ask me after the legislative session ends. But the short answer is plenty.
Wow.
We are about midway through the legislative session. The budget is being debated in the House, and there's still plenty of legislation that is floating around that we will be covering closely leading up to Sine Die, that second Thursday in May. We're also about to have filing open for the 124 House and 46 Senate seats that are up for re-election this year. Remember, you have a State House representative and senator that is running this year.
Awesome.
Do you know who that is? Do you guys know? I can only do so much for you. scstatehouse.gov, that's where that lives. But there is plenty that will be going on, and many of them will be in primaries this June. We'll be following those. We're going to be bringing you a lot of coverage leading up to the primaries. And we'll be closely covering our 7 congressional district races as well.
Thank you.
There will be several big June primaries for those seats, especially since there are numerous embattled incumbents. One such incumbent is 1st District Republican Nancy Mace, who just got the coveted endorsement of former President Donald Trump in her race. Despite the purple nature of this district, the endorsement helps shore Mace's right flank, which turns out to vote in these primaries. Now, it is a blow to her primary challenger, Catherine Templeton, who has the support of some of those in Trump's orbit. Mace got into it with ABC News' George Stephanopoulos on his show this week over her support of Trump, who last May in a civil trial was convicted of libel for sexually assaulting, not raping, the writer E. Jean Carroll in the mid-1990s. Carroll spoke out against the sexual assault and the subsequent trauma caused by Trump, who called her a liar when she spoke out. Take a listen to this exchange with Stephanopoulos and Mace.
Well, I will tell you, I was raped at the age of 16. And any rape victim will tell you, I've lived for 30 years with an incredible amount of shame over being raped. I didn't come forward because of that judgment and shame that I felt. And it's a shame that you will never feel, George. And I'm not going to sit here on your show and be asked a question meant to shame me about another potential rape victim. I'm not gonna do that.
It's actually not about shaming you. It's a question about Donald Trump.
No, you are shaming me.
You've endorsed Donald Trump for president.
Right.
Donald Trump has been found liable for rape by a jury. Donald Trump has been found liable for defaming the victim of that rape by a jury. It's been affirmed by a judge.
It was not a criminal court case, number one. Number two, I live with shame. And you're asking me a question about my political choices, trying to shame me as a rape victim, and I find it disgusting. And quite frankly, E. Jean Carroll's comments when she did get the judgment, joking about what she was going to buy, it makes it harder for women to come forward when they make a mockery out of rape, when they joke about it.
Doesn't it make it harder for women to come forward when they are
It makes it harder when other women joke about it, and she's joked about it. I find it offensive. And I also find it offensive that you're trying to shame me with this question.
I'm not trying to shame you at all. In fact,
I have dealt with this for 30 years. You know how hard it was to tell my story 5 years ago when they were doing a fetal heartbeat bill and there were no exceptions for rape, incest, or rape or incest in there? I had to tell my story because no other woman was coming forward. No rape victims were represented. And you're trying to shame me this morning.
I'm just asking.
And I find it offensive, and this is why women won't come forward.
Women won't come forward because they're defamed by those who perpetrate rape. Donald Trump
They are judged and they're shamed, and you're trying to shame me this morning. I think it's disgusting.
I'm not shaming you at all.
I told my story. It took me 25 years to tell my story. I was judged for it. I still get judged for it today.
I'm asking you a very simple question.
And I answered it. You're shaming me for my political choices.
I'm asking you a question about why you endorse someone who's been found liable for rape.
It was not a criminal court. This was a civil court. It was a civil court. And by the way, she joked about the judgment and what she was going to do with all that money, and I find that offensive.
I'm asking you
about
the man
as a rape victim who's been shamed for years now because of her rape, you're trying to shame me again by asking me this political question.
You've repeated that again.
I think it's offensive. As a woman, I find it offensive. For my political choices, I've endorsed the man that I believe is best for our country. It's not Joe Biden. And you looked at the dueling rallies yesterday in Georgia. Laken Riley's family was with Donald Trump. They weren't with Joe Biden. The same guy yesterday that apologized for calling her killer an illegal, who wasn't illegal. And here you are trying to shame a rape victim. I find it disgusting.
Now, was Stephanopoulos' question articulate as it could have been? No. Was Mace being evasive? Well, it sounded like it. Now, on Twitter, Carol posted, "Thank you, George Stephanopoulos, for valiantly defending me. I wish Representative Nancy Mace well, and I salute all survivors for their strength, endurance, and holding on to their sanity," quote. And Mace wasn't the only South Carolinian on a Sunday show. Senator Lindsey Graham was on NBC's Meet the Press with Kristen Welker, where he spoke about funding for Ukraine and Israel. Welker asked Graham if Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is hurting Israel by not doing more to address the humanitarian crisis.
No, I really don't. I'd like to help the humanitarian crisis, but when the President of the United States talks about Bibi and not Hamas, we're missing the boat here. When you talk about red lines against Israel, we should be talking about red lines against Iran. Israel's not killing American soldiers. Iran is through their proxies. So I would urge President Biden to hold the great Satan Iran accountable for killing soldiers in Jordan and attacking shipping. So, yeah, I think he's got it backwards. We should be all in helping Israel. We should try to help the humanitarian crisis, but don't say or do anything that would empower our enemy.
And President Biden does spend plenty of time talking about Hamas. The issue here is there not more that Israel can do to help the humanitarian crisis open up a crossing off for their own port in the area?
Stay tuned in that area. I think Israel will be coming up with some sea corridor relief ideas. But the line that struck me the most in the State of the Union, he told Hamas, if you release the hostages, the war will be over. I literally about fell out of my seat. Is the president saying that if the hostages are released by Hamas, they can stay in power? That ends the conflict? I want to be very clear about this. President Trump believes it's non-negotiable when it comes to Hamas. They have to be destroyed militarily. They can't be in charge. So I'm challenging the Biden administration today to clear this up. You cannot allow Hamas to stay in power. You can't allow them to have 6 brigades to do October 7th again. So the hostage issue is important, but we have to have a non-negotiable policy when it comes to destroying the military capability of Hamas.
And President Biden said that he does stand firmly behind that objective.
Well, he shouldn't have said the war is over if you release the hostages. It will not be over.
Senator, you have always supported aid to Ukraine. You've argued it's critical to keeping Putin from invading its NATO allies. Now, former President Trump has said that he would only support it if it came in the form of a loan. And that's not typically how the United States supports our allies. Why do you think that's the best course of action right now, Senator?
We're $34 trillion in debt. Nobody wants to help Ukraine more than I do. But President Trump is trying to do 2 things here. Help an ally, but tell the American people, pay us back if you can. I think most Americans would like to help Ukraine, but the idea of giving and never being repaid should be off the table. He mentioned this to me, I think, playing golf. Why don't we make it a loan? Well, we did that in World War II with Britain. So when you're $34 trillion in debt, you need to be thinking about the American people, just not allies. So I think the loan is the way to get the aid to Ukraine. He will be speaking, President Trump, to the Speaker tomorrow or Tuesday about turning the aid into a loan. It'll be forgivable, no interest. They have tons of minerals in Ukraine. You get back on your feet, try to pay us back.
Trump told you he's going to reach out to the Speaker.
Yes.
Are you confident this is something that the White House would sign on to, given the fact that
I can't
this
imagine
is a loan?
any member of Congress would object to trying to get our allies to pay us back when we're $34 trillion in debt, if they can.
Of Graham's longtime communications director, Kevin Bishop, announced that he will be running in the 3rd congressional district race following Congressman Jeff Duncan's decision not to run following his divorce due to an extramarital affair. Also in that primary race will be State Representative Stuart Jones of Lawrence, Sherry Biggs, a lieutenant colonel in the Air National Guard, and businessman Frankie Franco. Let's bring it back to the State House and look at some of its machinations.
Interesting.
The Russ McKinney has this report about the $3.5 billion accounting error discovered last year that sparked turmoil among public finance leaders and the legislature.
The $3.5 billion accounting error that led to a public official's resignation last spring continues to reverberate through the State House. Comptroller General Richard Ekstrom resigned last year after the bookkeeping snafu. But now there's renewed focus on the error, with more questions raised around almost $2 billion of that $3.5 billion that sat in a state bank account that no one seems to know who or what specifically that money belongs to. Officials say they know how the money got there, and like last year, no one says the money is missing or was misspent. Yet state lawmakers are looking into how the money was managed by those over the bank account, mainly the state treasurer's office and its leader, Curtis Loftus. Berkeley County Senator Larry Groom's Finance Subcommittee is looking into the matter.
$1.8 billion in cash is in an account that's unaccounted for. When I say unaccounted for, I mean the treasurer has been unable to tell us so far which agency and which account the $1.8 billion belongs to. At the end of June 30th last year, the state of South Carolina had $11 billion in cash assets in investments. Out of this $11 billion, we know where all but $1.8 billion is supposed to go.
Grooms introduced a resolution in the Senate last week that calls on the treasurer to freeze the $1.8 billion account until lawmakers can sort the matter out. Loftus is expected to testify before Grooms' panel this month. In a recent Fox Carolina TV interview, he blamed the Comptroller's office for the problem.
We have very little communication with the Comptroller General's office. We send them requests for information. They don't give it to us. They send us directives. My office is in turmoil because I can't get the Comptroller General's office to follow the law. And the problem the taxpayer has to worry about is if they don't rein in the Comptroller General's office, if they don't require him to do his job, then the whole finance system falls apart.
Senator Groom says the Comptroller's office identified the $1.8 billion discrepancy as part of the most recent state annual comprehensive financial report known as the ACFR. Governor Henry McMaster appointed Brian Gaines, then the highly regarded state budget director, to be comptroller after Ekstrom's resignation last year. Speaking to Greenville's Fox Carolina, Loftus called for the comptroller's office to be abolished and its duties shifted to another office, possibly his. Neither the treasurer nor the comptroller report to the governor, who told reporters last week that certainly there should not be one penny of taxpayer money that isn't accounted for.
This is the people's money, every dime of it, and we ought to know where it is, where it's going, why it's going there. We want to know when it gets there, if it's used for what it's supposed to be used for. But to have this kind of accounting, they call it an accounting error. So far as we know, it's not a misspending error. So far as just an accounting error is not acceptable. I mean, when the people lose confidence in the government accounts, that's not good.
Both the treasurer and comptroller general are elected officials, and tension between their two offices is nothing new. The two top financial offices have found themselves at odds at times going back decades. Not only are lawmakers trying to get to the bottom of the $3.5 billion accounting error, they're considering asking the state's voters to approve making the treasurer and comptroller general positions appointed by the governor, as opposed to being popularly elected.
Thanks, Russ.
We love you.
Moving on March 6th, the legislature elected Associate Supreme Court Justice John W. Kittredge to succeed retiring Chief Justice Don Beatty. Beatty is the High Court's only black justice and is the second black justice to ever sit on the state Supreme Court. Beatty hits the mandatory retirement age of 72 in April and will formally step down at the end of his term on July 30th. Kittredge has served as a state court judge for 33 years. He was elected a family court judge in 1991 and later served as judge of the Circuit Court and the Court of Appeals. With what will soon be an all-white male Supreme Court, lawmakers will be under pressure in the future to diversify the court when it comes to selecting Kittredge's successor. Next up, last week, lawmakers approved a compromise on the constitutional carry bill that Governor Henry McMaster promptly signed into law. The law makes it legal for South Carolinians who can legally purchase a gun to not only open carry it, but to do it without obtaining a permit, which would require training. As part of the compromise, there are millions of dollars now to provide for free training, which was also included in the bill. South Carolina becomes the 28th state to have such a law on the books, and there are also harsher penalties for criminals possessing guns when they shouldn't, and for people who illegally use weapons, aspects that Governor McMaster and law enforcement pushed hard for. And this year, South Carolina House members are seeking to expand a K-12 voucher or scholarship law that lets parents tap into public money to send their child to a private school of their choice or access other specified education-related needs. But first, they need the Supreme Court to say it's constitutional. South Carolina Public Radio's Mayan Schechter has this report.
The South Carolina Supreme Court last week heard arguments over a state law that allows families meeting certain federal poverty limits to access public money for private school tuition and other specified K-12 needs. It's unclear when the 5 justices will decide whether the law signed by Governor Henry McMaster last year is constitutional, but leaders in the Republican-controlled South Carolina House aren't waiting to find out. The House's Education Committee fast-tracked legislation last week that, if passed, would allow thousands more families to access millions of dollars in public money for their child's education. House Speaker Merle Smith, a Republican from Sumter, and House Education Committee Chairwoman Shannon Erickson, a Republican from Beaufort, filed a bill, H. 5164, to expand the so-called Education Scholarship Trust Fund. Smith spoke to reporters recently after leaders unveiled the legislation.
I feel confident that the Supreme Court will affirm that decision, or affirm our legislation that is constitutional. And to the extent if they don't, then certainly that does not put a death knell into school choice in South Carolina.
Their proposal would in large part eliminate the poverty limits for families to apply for money, opening the vouchers to any parent with a student in South Carolina. Right now, the state offers a $6,000 per student voucher that can be spent on private school tuition, among other education-related needs like transportation, textbooks, or tutoring. The vouchers currently include an enrollment cap that at the third year is limited to up to 15,000 students. If a change to the law is approved, the expanded version would strike the cap, allotting so many vouchers depending on how much money the legislature spends per year. An initial fiscal impact statement attached to the bill says an estimated total by year 3 of the program will cost nearly $106 million. If the law is expanded with no cap limits, the South Carolina Revenue and Fiscal Affairs Office says it estimates there could be up to 185,000 students who apply by year 2027-2028. Last week, House and Senate Democrats chided their Republican colleagues, arguing the proposal is nothing more than a blank check for the state to pull money away from public schools.
We believe these misguided Republican efforts widen the great divide that persists in education outcomes, widening the gap of opportunities, widening the outcome gaps between the haves and the have-nots in the state of South Carolina.
That's State Representative Roger Kirby, a Florence Democrat and the Assistant House Minority Leader.
Many of the Republicans who are authoring and sponsoring and writing and pushing these type bills are so far removed from public education, they couldn't find a school with a map.
Democrats, joined by at least one House Republican and the state's teachers groups, have called on their colleagues to slow down and avoid rushing such an expanded proposal, given the Supreme Court hasn't yet issued a ruling on the current law. Last week, state House leaders and voucher opponents finally got their chance to be heard before the state's highest court.
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court, my name is Ramya Ravindran on behalf of the petitioners. This case brings back to the court the important issue of the Constitution's prohibition on the use of public funds for the direct benefit of private schools.
The justices will decide whether the 2023 law violates a part of the South Carolina Constitution that bans direct aid to any school other than public schools. Arguing on behalf of the plaintiff, she said the program is illegal because the money goes into a state-controlled trust fund.
This court 4 years ago in Adams versus McMaster applied Section 4 to a private school voucher program.
Obviously, we weren't convincing then, were we?
Under which public funds were to be used to fund tuition at private schools. And this court found that program unconstitutional, and as it stated, a direct payment of funds to private schools is contrary to the framers' intention not to grant public funds outrightly to such institutions.
But attorneys who spoke in support of the law, including for the House Speaker and the State Department of Education, told the justices that the money would be going to parents first and not directly to the private school itself. Therefore, they argued it's not unconstitutional.
My name is Jim Gillum. I represent the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Mr. Merle Smith, Jr. What's important in this case is there's two things that the petitioners need to demonstrate in order to invalidate this act under the no aid provision. They have to demonstrate that there's both a direct benefit to private schools, and they have to demonstrate that public dollars are at issue. I was listening, and Justice Few, I listened to your question. I think the Rosetta Stone of this case is figuring out who the direct beneficiary is. And Justice Few says, well, what's the test for that? Well, there is a test. If we look at Durham and we look at Adams, we really see a two-part test that emerges. Number one, does the act give the student an independent choice between public and private school? Number two, is there neutrality? What does neutrality mean? Is there competition? Can both public schools and private schools compete for the dollars associated from the scholarship?
Critics of the program also say the law is flawed because the superintendent of education is tasked with running it. The state constitution refers to the superintendent as the chief administrative officer of the public education system. Here's James Lockamy, a retired Court of Appeals chief judge who sat in on the case last week, questioning the lawyer for the superintendent and the education department, Miles Coleman.
Does the superintendent of education have the right under Article 11, since it's titled Public Education, and since in Section 2, I think it says that she will oversee public education, does the superintendent have the right to say, wait a minute, Article 11 doesn't provide that I do all these advisory committees, that I process these applications, that I oversee this program? What if that occurred? Would that be proper? Can the legislature say, no, we order you to do that, no matter what the Constitution says?
Your Honor, there is absolutely no question that the legislature can do what they have done. And here's why the petitioner's argument is astonishing. In their brief, they quote from Article 11, Section 7, which expressly states that the superintendent's duties shall be prescribed by law. You've got one constitutional provision that expressly allows...
Yeah, but aren't those duties, when you say prescribed by law, don't they relate to the title of the article? The title of the article of public education? So you feel like the title of Article 11, which deals with public education, can be expanded by the legislature and go beyond public education?
Your Honor, every student in the state who will participate in this program is a member of the public. It doesn't say the public school system operated by the state. It refers to public education, the education of members of the public. And Your Honor, respectfully, that is what this program is attempting to do.
Meanwhile, back at the State House, the House of Representatives is expected to pass the expanded version of the law before session ends in May, but it's unclear whether the bill has any chance in the upper chamber. Senate Majority Leader Shane Massey, a Republican from Edgefield, told reporters recently that the legislature should give the program time to work before lawmakers change it at all.
Thanks, Mayan, and thanks to all of our South Carolina Public Radio team for their stories here. Welcome to the wind down section, our little break from the news. But that doesn't mean the news doesn't come into the wind down section, A.T. Shire, producer of the pod.
Truer words have never been spoken, Gavin.
Wow.
Truer words have never been spoken.
That
I gotta
is so
say,
correct.
that just biting, insightful, I mean, frankly, commentary that reaches many aspects of society.
We try to take a break from the news, but it creeps in.
Gavin
finds a way. It's like water in a crack.
Gavin just cannot shut it off. Anyway, we only did one episode last week. That's where this I would say dynamo energy comes from between the two of us, a repartee that is unmatched. So, Gavin, what did you do in your break? I went to 2 concerts.
What'd you do? I'm going to go ahead and tell you what I did.
I went to 2 very big heavy metal concerts with my very pregnant wife. It was cool.
Your baby's already experienced more metal than I have.
I would say that Caitlin hosted a mosh pit in her stomach. Anyway, Gavin, what did you do?
I just hung out down in Charleston with my dad and my stepmother. She was up in D.C. for a couple days before, so she was just me and Dad for a while, which was really interesting because I haven't really hung out with just Jay.
Interesting.
It's like fun Jay time. We actually went out. We saw some friends, had a big old time. Maybe had a couple of little drinks and some laughs, but
maybe. Can't confirm.
It's so funny because
huge if true.
Once you get that man going, kind of like us, you get a good riff going, you get a good bit going. I mean, my God, this man is a master.
He's a machine.
It was good to see him because it's been, I try and go down there once a month and see them. I was down there briefly before, but not long enough.
You were working.
Yeah, and so it was it was really in and out. So I needed to take a break since we just got the campaign trail. This was a perfect time to do it because you were traveling. So
yeah,
it was nice. It was good. We had decent weather, even though there's some storms. The whole food and
quote
wine
unquote
thing.
storms.
The storm was coming.
Anyway, Gavin.
But it was great.
The storm is coming here.
Did not watch the Oscars. Don't care.
Who cares? Anyway, I just like that I saw John Mulaney, instead of reading his intro to his category, just recounted the plot of Field of Dreams. Anyway, Gavin, speaking of, it is my Field of Dreams that we have calls. We got 2 calls here. Are you ready, Gavin?
Yes. Hit the play button.
Here we go.
Hey, Gavin and AT. This is Victoria, Northeast Columbia. Longtime listener, recent frequent caller. Congratulations on your 500th episode. What a milestone. So congratulations. Just enjoy all the warm wishes that you're getting and all the pride that you're receiving from what you've done over the years. Changed up the podcast and even increased your influence, keeping us entertained over the years. So congratulations. Best wishes to you. I know you'll be great. Take care. Thanks again. Bye.
Victoria, so great to hear from you as always, and such sweet words from her.
We love you.
When we think back over 500 episodes, it's crazy. It was just a fever dream, if you will. Every Monday is still, in some ways, frantic.
We're not well right
Fridays.
now. Yeah.
But we look back, I guess specifically during those COVID years, it's been the first 2 years.
We were young then. We were young then, okay? We had more stamina than we do now. Anyway, Gavin, second call in the double dip. We love you, Victoria. Please let us know how the Girl Scouts are going. Gavin, this one is more directed at you in that it is one of your doctors calling.
Oh, God.
Okay, are you
Again?
ready? Yes. Here we go.
I think so.
Hey, fellas. Reed again. Just wanted to say not a doctor. So I think there's a little bit of background noise in my last call, and it got a little confusing. So, yeah, there's that. I'm actually a technical rep on aircraft. So not a doctor. Maybe an aircraft doctor. Maybe. We can go with that. I don't know. Just want to say gomenasai. Apologies for that. And I got a hot take for you guys. It's actually a couple of numbers. So back in 2022, last year, we got data for this. 7,825 guns were stolen in South Carolina. 68% of all guns stolen in the Columbia area were from unlocked vehicles. So I thought it was important with the constitutional carry bill, H 3594, bouncing back and forth between the House and the Senate, that we should address that. I feel like that part is not getting brought up in the debate, that a lot of the illegal guns that we're trying to stop are being stolen from law-abiding citizens that aren't storing their guns. I actually just wrote a letter to all the members of the House asking them to either put a provision in there requiring people to lock their cars, the firearms there. I mean, they have to do it if their car's on Capitol grounds or at school. Why can't we just do it everywhere? Just my thought. Or at a minimum, educational campaign around the state, letting everybody know how bad it is for guns to get stolen out of cars. I don't know. I don't think I need to say that. That's weird. Anyway, that's all I got. And hope you guys have a great day. And arigatou gozaimashita.
Dr. Reed, so humble. We need more doctors like him.
We need more humble, I would say, aeronautic doctors.
Sky doctor.
Sky doctor.
We are a maritime podcast, but we could, and we do actually, I should say, need a plane.
Yes, we need a plane.
We need a plane.
Reed, please work on that and reach back out to us.
Give us a plane.
I love your hot take. I love that I saved it for this episode. It ties in so very nicely with...
If you got a gun in your car, at the minimum, lock the car
I know
door.
that Gavin
lock
and
the
I...
glove box.
Gavin and I, on our free time, on our weekends, we travel around the city and we try and door handles.
Always just grabbing.
We're trying the door handles.
I'm saying, if you got like a logo, like a hunting logos or stuff like that in your car, or your pickup truck,
Antler Life, I don't know.
I'm gonna see if that door's open. Because chances are there's probably something in there.
I have seen Assault Life stickers, and you're basically advertising for...
Or Sig Sauer, like.
Sig Sauer, is that a drink?
Sauer.
Is that a drink?
Is that how you actually say it? Sig Sauer?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Bobby Cox is going to call me like, you didn't say my name right.
That was right.
Just, be smart.
Please.
If you're going to be a gunner, that's the minimum we can ask. And I don't want to infringe on anyone's Second Amendment right.
No.
Or assume that you're dumb, but just be smart.
It's smarter to lock your car. We'll leave it at that.
I mean, just in general.
We'll leave it at that.
But sometimes I don't. Try and find out when I don't.
I will say I never locked the Jaguar.
Oh, the Jaguar.
I never locked the Jaguar.
Well, it's so the luxury. It's luxury.
It is true luxury.
Does it has a phone? Correct?
It doesn't have a phone. It has, I would say, 5 or 6 ashtrays.
Well, luxury. Wait, so never had a car phone?
It's never had a car phone, sadly.
Wow, so not
that nice. Not that nice.
Wow. Jay Jackson's Saab had a phone. Never activated, because that thing, everyone's like, back in the day, you activated a phone. It was hundreds of dollars.
If you thought pressing the internet button on your flip phone was going to get you in trouble, picking that phone up, you're going straight to the
Don't
poorhouse.
even turn it on. It's going to cost money just to power that thing up. The kids don't even know. They don't even know. They got the whole world at their fingertips now.
Anyway, Gavin, the last thing I want to talk about before we go, there's a potential loss in my family, and I'm trying to intervene, okay?
My God.
Tell me if I'm crazy. Please call in if you agree. Chat, check this out. So my parents, they are moving down.
Ah.
Okay?
Very exciting.
They closed on their house. It's 10 blocks from my house.
Oh, love that.
Right? And my dad, he was talking to me about what he was bringing and what he was going to get rid of. And he said, everyone knows there's no more reliable piece of equipment in anyone's house than the garage refrigerator. And he's trying to throw out my childhood garage refrigerator, which is running perfectly fine. 30 years later, it is running perfectly fine, and this man is trying to get rid of it. That's not right. I propose to him that we bring it into the studio, plug it in right here. You can't get this baby above 33 degrees, okay? If you're talking about the coldest beer in Colombia, it's gonna.
I'm always looking for the coldest beer.
I know. It's gonna be in this fridge.
Would it be a little noisy to have in a studio?
It is incredibly loud. It sounds like a car idling at all times.
When it starts going, we just have to stop taping. You're like, we're going to have to wait till it turns off.
It never shuts off. It's always on.
It sounds very energy efficient.
I will
like
also say it never breaks down. So if anyone has some kind words for the humble garage fridge yeoman of the house.
We never had one. Again, going back to things that you had that we didn't have.
Very sad.
It was, but now Jay Jackson has one, and it's taken years to get to this point, and it is always stuck.
But new fridges break all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And these old ones, these old Studebakers that never shut down. Come on, this is an amazing thing, and you shouldn't take them for granted.
Bring it down here, Papa Shire.
Please. Anyway, all the garage fridge lovers out there, please
give me a shout. Yeah, tell us your favorite, fondest memories with your garage fridge.
What did you have that Gavin didn't? So,
See, I mean, the struggle.
Anyway,
everyone just doesn't think.
One thing that he does have that he needs to close is this podcast. So anyway, Gavin,
wow,
what a bow!
What a bow, A.T. Shire.
Say goodbye.
Thank you for listening to the pod, folks. You can always show us your appreciation by leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts or a voicemail like Victoria and Reed did at 803-563-7169. Dr. Reed, my God, how rude of me. Also, you can stay up to date with the latest news on scetv.org and southcarolinapublicradio.org. And don't forget to support your local newspapers. For the South Carolina Lede, I'm Gavin Jackson. Be well, South Carolina. Although I was talking to my dermatologist, I'm like, it looks like my skin's getting a little bit more wrinkly. I'm like, my hands they don't seem like the same. He's like, well, wrinkles and age. And
my hands don't have the luster they used to.